Millions of people are going to wake up tomorrow and run. Chase the title, the raise, the bigger place, the number that finally means they made it. And then there's you. Somewhere in the last year or two, you just stopped running. Not dramatically. You didn't quit in a blaze of glory or post a long goodbye. You just started saying no to things you used to want. People noticed. They asked if something was wrong. Some of them used the word lazy or unambitious, or the gentler one that stings more, comfortable. Stay with me, because what looks like giving up is almost never giving up. Here's what nobody tells you about the rat race. You don't leave because you run out of energy. You leave because one day you actually see the finish line move. Today we're going to look at the psychology of people who quietly step off and why your body knew it before your calendar did. Because the thing they keep calling laziness is usually a very late, very expensive act of clarity. It starts smaller than anyone imagines. A message lands on a Tuesday. Bigger role, more money, more of everything you were supposed to want. Your cursor sits over the reply box, and nothing in you moves. That's the part that unsettles people. Not the refusal, the absence of wanting. You can argue with someone who says no. You can't argue with someone who shrugs. So the exit is quiet. Because it isn't really a decision. It's a slow withdrawal of belief. You stop volunteering for the extra project. You stop opening the salary comparison sites at midnight. You start guarding one weekday evening like it costs money, because in a way it does. Nobody sees a moment. There's no resignation letter to point at. So the people around you fill the gap with the only story they have, which is that you drifted, or you settled, or you lost your edge. And the strange thing is, you can't fully defend yourself because you're not sure either. You spent years fluent in a language everyone understood. Next step, next level, next year. Every conversation had a direction built into it, and you never had to explain where you were going because the answer was always up. Then one day the sentences stop arriving. Someone asks what's next, and your mouth opens, and there's a small, clean silence where the plan used to be. Have you had that conversation yet? Where someone asks about your 5-year plan and you realize you don't have an answer they'd accept. But here's the part that explains everything, and it isn't about you at all. It's about the design of the race. Think back to the first raise that felt like something. Real money, more than you'd ever made. For about 11 days it was electric. You checked the account just to look at it, and then it was just your salary. Psychologists have a name for that, hedonic adaptation. In the 70s, Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell described what they called the hedonic treadmill, and the image is exact. Good things lift, then your baseline quietly climbs up to meet them, and you're standing right where you started, running to stay level. Brickman's team went further and studied lottery winners, people who had won amounts that were supposed to solve everything. The winners were not dramatically happier than people who had won nothing. What the research found was stranger and sadder. The everyday pleasures, the coffee, the conversation, the ordinary evening, rated lower for them afterward. The win had raised the floor of what counted as good. So the belt speeds up to match you. Always. That isn't a flaw in the race that better time management would fix. That is the race. And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. The promotion you're chasing has a version of you already living on the other side of it. And that version is bored by Tuesday. There's a second engine underneath the first one, and this is where it gets uncomfortable. 11 at night. You're scrolling a professional feed you don't remember opening. Someone you sat 2 seats away from in a lecture hall now has a job title with the word head in it. Your thumb stops. Nothing about your actual life changed in that second. Your rent didn't rise. Your work didn't get worse. But something in your chest reorganized itself anyway. In 1954, Leon Festinger laid out social comparison theory, and the core of it is almost embarrassing in how simple it is. We don't measure our lives against some absolute standard. We measure them against people we consider similar to us, not billionaires, the person from your lecture hall. Which means the race doesn't exist out in the world. It exists in the lane beside you. And here's the honest part. A lot of what you spent your 20s chasing, you never wanted. You wanted to not be behind. Those are different hungers, and they feel identical from the inside until you finally get the thing and feel nothing. You know the moment I mean. The announcement goes out. the messages come in. You read every one of them, and somewhere around the fourth congratulations, you notice you're waiting for the feeling to start. It doesn't start. You go home. You eat something standing up at the counter, and a small voice you've been ignoring for years says, quietly, "So that's it." That's not ingratitude. That's information. So what happens when you stop looking sideways? The lane goes quiet, and the goal you were sprinting toward starts to look like a thing someone else picked out for you a long time ago in a room you weren't in. Now go further back, because none of this got installed at work. You're 8. There's a piece of paper on the fridge, held up by a magnet shaped like fruit. It has your grades on it, not your drawings. Your grades. An adult introduces you to another adult, and the sentence they use to explain who you are includes a number, or a school, or a placement. You feel yourself get taller inside that sentence, and every year since, a grown-up has asked you the same question in slightly different clothes. What do you want to be? Which was never a question about being. It was a question about what you plan to produce. Psychologists call the result contingent self-worth. Jennifer Crocker's research at the University of Michigan looked at students whose sense of value rested on academic performance, and what she found runs against the whole logic of the race. Those students didn't end up steadier or more driven. They reported more stress, more pressure, and a self-image that swung with every result. Because if your worth is a score, you can never stop playing. Not for a weekend, not for an afternoon, which explains the strangest part of stepping off, the part almost nobody warns you about. When you finally slow down, you don't feel free right away. You feel a low, humming panic. Not because you miss the work, because you don't know what you're worth standing still. Sit with that one. That's the real cost of admission, and everyone who has quietly left has paid it. So what actually happens in the people who make it through that panic? They don't stop wanting. They re-aim. The psychologist Tim Kasser spent decades studying the difference between extrinsic goals, meaning money, image, and status, and intrinsic ones, meaning close relationships, growth, and being useful to someone. His research consistently links a strong pull toward the extrinsic set with lower well-being, more anxiety, and thinner relationships, not because money is evil, because a goal that lives in other people's eyes can never be finished. And the income research points the same direction. Once your real needs are covered, more money keeps buying things, but it stops buying much feeling. You already knew that. Your body knew it in the 11 days after the raise. So the quiet escape is not a retreat from ambition. It's ambition changing what it's willing to be measured by. You didn't lower the bar. You moved it somewhere nobody else can see it, which is exactly why they think it's gone. There's a cost, and I'm not going to pretend there isn't. You become hard to explain. At weddings and dinners, someone asks what you do and you watch their face do a small calculation, and then the conversation gently moves to someone else. You'll lose a few people that way, not through any argument. They just stop reaching out because you stopped being useful as a landmark for how they're doing. And some nights, usually the ones where you're tired, the old panic comes back and asks whether you were brave or just scared. Is that a question you've had? The one you can't settle at 2 a.m? You will feel invisible in rooms where you used to feel impressive. And I'm not saying the people still running are fools. Some of them love it. Some of them are building something real, and the scoreboard just happens to sit next to it. The difference isn't effort. It's who wrote the scoring rule. So here it is, plainly. There is nothing wrong with you. You're not lazy. You're not unambitious. You're not someone who peaked early and made peace with it. You look directly at a game that was designed to move its own finish line, and you decline to keep sprinting for a floor that rises every time your foot lands. A treadmill needs you running just to keep you in the same place. That's that whole mechanism. Nobody built it to take you anywhere. Ground is different. Ground is slower. It's less impressive to describe. Nobody claps when you step onto it, and for the first few months it feels like failure, because the scenery moves so gently you're not sure it's moving at all. But a year on real ground, and you're actually somewhere. A body that isn't braced. Mornings that belong to you. A few people who know the unemployed version of your name. You didn't stop running. You stepped off the belt and put your feet on something that moves when you move. That's not the absence of a life. That was always the point of one. If one part of this landed harder than the rest, tell me which one down in the comments. I read them, and the answers are never what I expect. And if you're standing in that strange, quiet stretch right now, where you've stopped running but haven't figured out what to walk toward, yet you are not behind. You're just off the belt, on ground that finally goes somewhere when you do. Give it time to move under you. Subscribe to keep decoding yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.